In early 2024, a 71-year-old man in northern England was admitted to the hospital with a horrifying and life-threatening condition. His body was under attack by a rare, flesh-eating disease. Doctors were baffled. How had he contracted such an aggressive infection? The cause remained a mystery until investigators uncovered a sinister truth. This was no accident. Over the next few months, police would unravel one of the most intricate and calculated murder plots in British history. Hi, I'm Your Name, and welcome back to True Crime Stories. Today's case is one of the most bizarre and chilling true crime stories in recent history. It's a case so shocking that even Crown prosecutors described it as stranger than fiction. Let's dive in. On January 22, 2024, 71-year-old Patrick O'Hara walked into the emergency department at the Royal Victoria Infirmary in Newcastle upon Tyne. He was in agony. The pain radiated from his upper arm, right where he had received a COVID booster shot just hours earlier. At first, medical staff suspected a botched vaccination. Maybe a poorly administered jab had caused some localized pain and swelling. They prescribed antibiotics and painkillers and sent him home with instructions to monitor the site. But by the next morning, Patrick's condition had worsened dramatically. His arm had become severely blistered, darkening with ominous patches of necrotic tissue. The pain was unbearable. He rushed back to the hospital, where doctors quickly realized they were dealing with something far more serious than a simple reaction to a vaccine. Tests were inconclusive. Nothing in his blood work explained what was happening, but as his flesh continued to deteriorate, the medical team reached a chilling conclusion. Patrick O'Hara was suffering from necrotizing fasciitis, a rare, fast-spreading, flesh-eating infection. And it all began at the supposed injection site of his COVID booster. Was this really a vaccine? Or had something far more sinister been injected into Patrick's bloodstream? Doctors fought to save his life, performing multiple surgeries to remove the dying tissue. Meanwhile, specialists were brought in to determine the cause. That's when toxicology expert Dr. EMT identified a likely culprit, iodomethane. Highly toxic iodomethane causes severe burns on contact with the skin, but what made it even deadlier was its ability to evade detection in the human body. It had never been documented in an injection case before, making this poisoning nearly impossible to trace. Someone had deliberately poisoned Patrick O'Hara, but who and why? The investigation began with the only lead Patrick could provide, his recent home visit from a nurse named Raj Patel. Earlier that morning, a community nurse had arrived at the home Patrick shared with his long-term partner, Jenny Leong. The man, who spoke with a slight South Asian accent, had been professional, if somewhat awkward. He had taken blood and urine samples before preparing the COVID booster injection. The investigation began with the only lead Patrick could provide, his recent home visit from a nurse named Raj Patel. Earlier that morning, a community nurse had arrived at the home Patrick shared with his long-term partner, Jenny Leong. The man, who spoke with a slight South Asian accent, had been professional, if somewhat awkward. He had taken blood and urine samples before preparing the COVID booster injection. Patrick recalled questioning the extra dose, as he had already received a booster less than 3 months prior, but Nurse Patel insisted it was necessary. Moments after the injection, Patrick felt an immediate, intense pain. Patrick O'Hara. Bloody hell! The nurse reassured him, claiming it was just a temporary sting. But Patrick couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. The nurse hurriedly packed his things and left in a rush. It wasn't until later, after Patrick had been hospitalized, that a chilling discovery was made. The letter confirming the nurse's visit wasn't real. The NHS had no record of a Raj Patel. No community nursing team existed under that name. The letter, though expertly crafted with official-looking NHS logos and legal disclaimers, was an elaborate forgery. Even the appointment reminder text Patrick received the day before was fake. And then came the moment that changed everything. As the fake nurse exited the house, Jenny had casually commented, "You're the same height as my son." That's when Patrick knew. Raj Patel had never existed. The man who had injected him with poison was Jenny's own son, Dr. Thomas Kwan. Through surveillance footage, police retraced the suspect's movements. That morning, he had travelled from a Premier Inn in Newcastle city centre using a car with fake licence plates. The footage showed him checking into the hotel under a false name before leaving 2 hours later, now wearing a long coat, a flat cap and blue surgical gloves. Investigators tracked the vehicle back to its origin, the home of Dr. Thomas Kwan, a respected general practitioner in Sunderland. But beneath his professional exterior, Dr. Kwan had been harbouring dark resentments. His mother's financial decisions had enraged him for years. He believed she had stolen money from his late father and unfairly distributed their inheritance. His anger boiled over when he learned she had amended her will, granting Patrick O'Hara the right to live in her home for life. In a series of disturbing letters, Thomas had demanded control of her estate. She refused. Now he was out for revenge. Police raided Dr. Kwan's home, uncovering a personal laboratory of poisons. Among the deadly substances found were liquid thallium, sulfuric acid, arsenic, and the ingredients for the highly lethal chemical weapon ricin. His internet search history revealed chilling research into poison production, methods of undetectable murder, and even official police guidance on homicide investigations. Thomas had spent years preparing for the perfect crime. He had even attempted alternative murder plots before deciding on the nurse disguise. Among the evidence was a fabricated letter from a fake men's sporting association, offering Patrick free pre-made meals and drinks. Another fraudulent document invited him to a gentleman's wine tasting club. If Patrick had accepted, he would have unknowingly ingested a lethal dose of poison. Instead, Thomas devised an even more brazen plan, one that involved walking straight into his mother's home under a false identity and injecting Patrick with a deadly toxin right in front of her. The case against Dr. Kwan was overwhelming. In court, prosecutors argued that his extensive planning, knowledge of toxicology, and cold-blooded execution proved intent to kill. Faced with undeniable evidence, Thomas Kwan pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 31 years to life in prison. The case against Dr. Kwan was overwhelming. In court, prosecutors argued that his extensive planning, knowledge of toxicology, and cold-blooded execution proved intent to kill. Faced with undeniable evidence, Thomas Kwan pleaded guilty. He was sentenced to 31 years to life in prison. The judge, in his closing remarks, described Kwan's crime as an act of calculated cruelty, devoid of remorse. He had weaponized his medical expertise to orchestrate a murder so intricate that, had it not been for one small slip, his own mother's offhand comment, he might have gotten away with it. Patrick O'Hara, though left with lifelong complications from the poisoning, survived, a fact that ultimately sealed his would-be killer's fate in court. As for Jenny Leong, she was left shattered. The son she had once been so proud of had not only betrayed her, but had coldly attempted to murder the man she loved. The case of Dr. Thomas Kwan serves as a chilling reminder that sometimes the most dangerous monsters aren't strangers in the dark, they're the ones we trust the most. And that's the story of one of the most cold-blooded, premeditated murder attempts in recent British history. What do you think? Could Dr. Kwan have evaded capture if not for that one mistake? Let me know in the comments. And that's the story of one of the most cold-blooded, premeditated murder attempts in recent British history. What do you think? Could Dr. Kwan have evaded capture if not for that one mistake? Let me know in the comments. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss a new episode. Until next time, stay safe and stay curious.